Japan occupied all of Korea during the Second World War. At the Potsdam Conference, plans were made to jointly occupy Korea following the defeat of Japan. After the Second World War, Korea was liberated by the Soviets and the United States. At the conference, it was agreed that the Soviets will come from the north and the US from the south. It was decided that Korea would be divided by the 38th parallel. It was a division of occupation, the north being supported by the Soviets, while the South was supported by the United States. The North and the South differ in political ideology, a democratic South and a communist North. American forces finally reached Seoul, where they accept the Japanese surrender of southern Korea. The United States later leaves Korea, hoping that they will function as an independent state. South Korea held an election for presidency to display democracy. South Korea was under the rule of the democratic pro-American leader Syngman Rhee. However, Rhee was corrupt. As a result, South Korea, in essence, was under the rule of his dictatorship. In 1950, President Syngman Rhee's unpopular conservative faction loses its control over the South Korean Assembly when voters elect anti-Rhee moderates to office in the 1950 elections. Rhee remains president. The Truman Doctrine guaranteed the protection of non-communist states. It prevented the expansion of communism. Before the start of the war, the Truman Doctrine was applied to Asia as well as Europe, making it international. Truman signed the Executive Order 9981, which states, "It is hereby declared to be the policy of the President that there shall be equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed services without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin." There was a desegregation in the military. Ri proclaims his South Korean regime as the Independent Republic of South Korea, denying the legitimacy of North Korea and claiming sovereignty over the entire Korean peninsula. After Stalin approves of Kim Sung's request to invade South Korea, North Korea launches full-scale invasion. North Korean troops quickly pass the 38th parallel, meeting very little resistance and overpowering South Korea's defense. In response to invasion, Ri orders his military and special police forces to eliminate the threat posed to his regime. He detains political prisoners and leftist dissidents whom he fears will join the forces of communist invaders. He executes thousands of people during the Summer of Terror. The Security Council of the United Nations came up with a solution to commit troops to Korea. This resolution was passed because of the lack of presence from the Soviet delegate. This was due to the boycotting of the Soviets as a result of the United States not allowing Red China to rejoin the United Nations. North Korea invaded South Korea and captured their capital, Seoul. After this, the North Korean troops pushed the South all the way down into Busan, where they were all trapped and held. Incheon, located along Korea's west coast, not far from Seoul, hundreds of miles behind enemy lines, was where MacArthur planned for the American troops to tactically land. By landing in Incheon, the Americans would trap the North Koreans between them and the South Koreans in Busan. MacArthur's plan was successful. Truman then authorized MacArthur to advance in North Korea.
MacArthur led his soldiers past the 38th parallel and into Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea. Although Truman was not fond of this idea, MacArthur decided to go further into North Korea and closer to the Yalu River. The Chinese had been secretly crossing Yalu River to ambush the UN troops. With MacArthur's ambitious goal, Mao feared that the American troops will cross the border and go into mainland China. As a result, he orders thousands of troops to enter Korea, essentially entering the war. This caught the military leaders off guard. This caused a reaction from the Chinese, who then entered the war by initially crossing the river. Yuan felt overwhelmed by the counterattacks of Communist China. Led by Major General Oliver P. Smith, the trap forces fought a brutal 10-day battle in extreme cold and snow to break through the Chinese lines. Almost every UN soldier suffered from frostbite. Having escaped from Chosin Reservoir, Smith's men were evacuated from the port of Hungman. This was known as Frozen Chosin. The Communist troops pushed back American and South Korean troops back behind the 38th parallel. Later, American and South Korean troops successfully launched a defensive and stopped Chinese advance. Both sides launched a series of offensives. However, neither advanced significantly. Korea settled into a stalemate. During the stalemate, Truman began to talk of a ceasefire. However, MacArthur strongly wanted a war of liberation, pushing into mainland China. With the disagreement, Truman fires MacArthur and replaced him with General Matthew Ridgway to be Supreme Commander in Korea. Diplomats from China, North Korea, and the United States convened in Panmunjom, also known as Peace Village, located at the 38th parallel, to plan a political conference to reach agreement on a final, permanent peace treaty to end the war. Even this planning breaks down amidst angry accusations and counter-accusations from both sides. It dragged on for 2 years, finally breaking down over the issue of prisoners of wars, or POWs. During the Korean War, the swept-wing jet-powered MiG-15 of the Soviets outclassed the initial superiority of United Nations forces. The United States introduced its own swept-wing F-86 Sabre, which claimed kill-to-kill ratio as high as 10-to-1 against the MiGs. Republican Dwight D. Eisenhower won the presidential elections in 1952. Eisenhower, a retired general and World War II hero, has built his campaign largely around a promise to pursue an honorable truce in the Korean War, to allow the withdrawal of American combat forces as soon as possible. After nearly 2 years of negotiations, diplomats from the United States, North Korea, and China reached agreement on an armistice to end the UN peace action in Korea without a formal peace treaty. Both sides claim victory. Korea remains divided at the 38th parallel. The Battle of Pork Chop Hill comprises a pair of related Korean War infantry battles during the spring and summer of 1953. These were fought while the U.S. and the Communist Chinese and Koreans negotiated an armistice. In the U.S., they were controversial because of the many soldiers killed at Fort Heron of no strategic or tactical value. At a conference in Geneva, representatives from the United States and China failed to resolve the Korean issue. The armed stalemate at the 38th parallel will continue indefinitely. A severe typhoon uncovers a mass grave holding victims of the 1950 Summer of Terror. South Korean President Syngman Rhee's campaign of executions against leftists and other potential political dissidents.